Hello, my dearest Arthur and all my peeps. How are you today on this absolutely beautiful day? I hope you all get to go out and play in it. It's a beautiful day. Anyway, today I have another one of the monster stories. There are only two left. This one is the Civilized Snowman. The magic started with a very special present Paul Planck's dad gave him one Christmas. Paul's dad was not an ordinary dad. He did not have a normal job like most other dads, for he was a famous mountain climber. It was very exciting to have a famous father, but it upset Paul at Christmas because his dad was almost always away. Paul usually saw his dad then on the television news wearing goggles and a woolly hat and waving from the top of some white and glittering mountain. Paul wished that he too could climb mountains and have adventures in a far-off, pure white world. He imagined himself there where the sun shone down on a land of icing sugar and the flakes of snow were as soft as large goose feathers. He wished most of all that he could meet that strange mountain monster, the abominable snowman. Not even his dad had met the abominable snowman, although he had, one dark afternoon, seen a huge footprint in the snow. Then, one Christmas, everything changed. On Christmas Eve, Paul's dad left home to climb the highest mountain in the world. Before setting off, he placed a large round present with a very solid base on Paul's bedside table. It was wrapped in brown paper, and it had a sprig of holly on top, so it looked just like a big Christmas pudding. Paul was so excited he couldn't sleep at all. He lay in bed thinking, what could that present be? Just as he was about to fall asleep, he noticed a strange glow had filled the room. Paul got out of bed and looked out of the window, but it was dark and rainy outside. Then he looked at his present. It seemed to be shimmering with a bright light. Paul looked at the bedside clock. It was only 11 o'clock, but he couldn't wait any longer. Carefully now, he pulled away the brown paper. There, nestled inside, was a glass snowstorm, the kind you can shake to make the snow fall. Paul looked at his present in amazement as it began to glow even more fiercely. Inside the crystal dome, there was a snowy mountain with a glittering ice cap. The sky behind it was purple, dotted with silver stars, and swirling round the mountain were hundreds of tiny snowflakes like a great white blizzard. Paul looked again at his clock. It was nearly midnight. He reached out to shake the snowstorm, but as soon as his hands touched the glass, the room was bathed in a blinding white light. He could no longer feel the glass beneath his fingers, and before he knew it, he was being pulled into the snowstorm. He could feel himself whirling like the snowflakes and feel the cold, cold mountain wind on his cheeks. Whatever was happening? The next moment, Paul found himself sitting on the icy peak of a huge white mountain. It was like sitting on a diamond, and it was very cold, especially as Paul was only wearing pajamas. He looked about him. Down below, there were probably pine forests and wolves. Up here, everything was white and silent. Then he heard singing. Someone very near was happily singing away in a rich, deep voice. The song ended with a couple of pomp diddly pomp pomp. Just then, the singer stepped out from behind an icy peak. It was a monster. But it was not an ugly monster. It certainly did look very odd, though. It was covered from head to foot in soft white fur and had long ears which hung down like a spaniel's. The monster had large brown eyes and a great bush of fur underneath its nose, which looked rather like a huge mustache. It reminded Paul of his great uncle Edwin, the famous climber whose pictures he had seen in the Museum of Mountaineering. Great Uncle Edwin had got lost on a climbing expedition and had never been seen again. "I say," said the monster, "a visitor." Paul smiled. "Hello," he said. "Are you the abominable snowman?" "Roar!" the monster roared irritably. Then he said, "Hi-ho, Tilly-pom," in a weary way. "Yes," he replied. "At least, that's what they call me. But they're quite wrong. Actually, I am not abominable at all. In fact, I'm really very civilized. I read a great deal. I have tea at 4 o'clock every day, and I like to sing in the mornings. I also love chocolate. I don't suppose you have any chocolate with you by any chance." Now, it just so happened that Paul had a chocolate mouse in his pajama pocket. He took it out and handed it to the monster. The monster ate it very happily, politely leaving a piece for Paul. "That was delicious," said the monster kindly. "In return, perhaps you would like me to show you around? There are lots of lovely things to see, but first," he added, disappearing behind the icy peak and reappearing with a small white fur coat and hat. "You must put this on," he said. In the white fur outfit, Paul looked just like an abominable snowman himself. The monster took Paul's hand. He had a soft, furry paw like a bear, and his nails were beautifully trimmed. "Do you live here all alone?" asked Paul as they walked along the snowy mountain path. "Certainly not," said the monster in surprise. "That would be very lonely. There are lots of creatures like me living on all the mountains of the world. Once, a very long time ago, I was a famous mountain climber and lived down below like you. Then I came to the mountain on an expedition, and the snow fairies asked me if I would like to stay and help them. The birds, animals, plants, everything up here all needed protecting, you know, and famous climbers who know the mountains better than anyone are ideal for the job. So, by magic, they turned me into the creature I am today." The monster smiled and his mustache turned up. Then the monster showed Paul some of the creatures he watched over. The Arctic fox, who runs through the snow valleys of the highest mountains, the snowy owl, who flies silently above the tallest peaks, and the magic mountain hare, whose fur is as soft as the cotton wool and as white as the snow itself. Then he showed Paul how he gave the snowflakes their beautiful patterns and dusted the ice caps with silver to make them glitter. "And now it's time for tea," said the monster as he led Paul back to his warm cave. "I once had tea with the famous climber, Sir Edmund Hillary," said the monster as he handed Paul some buttered toast. Suddenly, Paul remembered his great uncle Edwin. He stared hard at the monster. "When you were a famous climber, before you became a protector of the mountain, who were you?" he asked. The monster smiled and picked up the large silver watch from the dresser behind him. He handed it to Paul. On the inside of the lid, engraved in delicate lettering, Paul could just read the name, Edwin Plank. Just at that moment, the watch let out a tiny chime. "Good heavens," said the monster, "it's midnight already." And even while he was still speaking, Paul felt himself starting to grow. The cave began to whirl about him, bathed in all the same blinding light as before, and in the distance Paul could faintly hear the voice of the monster calling after him. "Don't forget the land where the snowy owl flies and the Arctic fox runs," it called again and again, until Paul could hear it no more. The next moment Paul found himself back in his bedroom. His present was still wrapped up on the table beside his bed, just as if nothing had happened. Outside, the sun was shining on a snowy landscape. It had been snowing all night long. Just then, Paul's dad came into the bedroom. "The snow's too heavy on the mountains," he said, smiling. "I got a telegram at the station, so it looks as though I'll be home for Christmas." "Hooray!" shouted Paul and ran to hug his dad. As he did so, he realized he was holding something in his hand. There, glittering just like the snow on the tallest ice caps, was Great Uncle Edwin's watch. So it hadn't been a dream after all. When Paul grew up, he became a famous climber just like his father, and he never forgot the far-off icy lands where the Arctic fox runs and the snowy owl flies. But although he often went looking, he never ever met again that certain, very civilized monster who had tea at 4 o'clock every day and loved to eat chocolate. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Love you all. See you tomorrow. Bye.